What is General Munir's attitude to India?
Attitude is definitely hostile and hardline. Uh, but that is normal. I mean, that is normal for a senior general to have.
Today, as you know, is the fourth day of military clashes between India and Pakistan, and clearly there is escalation happening, possibly you could argue on both sides. Given General Munir's character and background, but also given the fact that he can't afford to fail when he takes on India, he needs to succeed, otherwise his own position as army chief would be in danger, how far do you think he's prepared to go?
This is a very difficult question to answer. On the escalation ladder, things can go out of hand. And that is the danger which our planners or decision makers have to carefully assess to what extent the nuclear threshold bluff of the Pakistanis can be called. It has become again fashionable here to talk about the Indian military's superiority in terms of technological acquisitions and strength, numerical capabilities, all taken together, of being far superior than the Pakistan army in terms of professional competence. So I have certain reservations about accepting this concept unreservedly. So it is a very matter of serious concern.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that General Munir will be determined to fight on because he cannot afford to emerge looking weak and looking as if he's lost.
That's right. There has to be some sort of an honorable sort of a stalemate.
Has he got the mental makeup? Has he got the guts? Has he got the strength to push the button? I'm not talking about strategy. I'm not talking about options. I'm talking about him. Is he the sort of man who could push the button? In other words, is he a Truman? Is he capable of being a Pakistani Truman?
I would say no. But again, it's an informed guess. So I hope it's correct.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. As Pakistan officially launched its retaliation this morning, there's one thing that both India and Pakistanis can agree on. The man who's ultimately responsible for the Pahalgam terror attack and the dramatic escalation between India and Pakistan thereafter is Pakistan's army chief, General Asim Munir. So today, he is the principal focus of our attention. What do we know about him, his background, his character, his career, his attitude to India, and what's called the Munir Doctrine? If there's one person we need to truly understand, it's General Munir. Joining me now is one of the great experts on the Pakistan Army, a former special secretary at R&AW, and author of a seminal book on the Pakistan Army called The Pakistan Army, Composition, Character and Compulsions, Rana Banerji. Mr. Banerji, I want to use this interview to try and understand Pakistan's Army Chief General Asim Munir. We know that before he became Army Chief, he was Director General of the ISI, and earlier he was Director General of Pakistan's Military Intelligence. What more can you tell me about his army career?
Thank you, Karan, for having me on your program. We must realize that General Munir has, throughout his career, had a professional field focus on the Indian front. So, at the brigade level, he had worked in Gilgit-Baltistan, had some experience of encounters in Siachen. Thereafter, he was chief of staff to the Corps Commander Mangla, which is again the offensive corps which looks at India. Then he was posted to the Force Command Northern Areas, again in Gilgit-Baltistan in 2015-16, wherefrom he was picked by General Bajwa to become his DGMI, Director General Military Intelligence, which he remained for almost 2 years before he made the natural progression to the post of DGISI. And this was the time when Imran Khan had by then become Prime Minister. Earlier, as a lieutenant colonel, he was deployed in Saudi Arabia with Pakistani forces, not as the defense attaché there, but Pakistani forces from time to time had been going for the personal security of Saudi monarchs. So, in one of those capacities, he was there, where he did his Hafiz-e-Quran, or at that level of seniority, he completed the Hafiz-e-Quran in Pakistan, and he has ever worn that badge around him.
Tell me, I gather General Munir's father was a school teacher, and I gather that as a young student, he began his studies in a madrasa. What sort of family background does he have?
Well, interestingly, he comes from a lower middle class origin. As you have rightly pointed out, his father was a teacher and later principal of a vocational training school in Rawalpindi. He comes, they had a small home in a suburb of Rawalpindi called Dheki Hasanabad. And he studied in the madrasa called the Qazi Madrasa Darul Tajweed in Lal Kutti, which is a suburb of Rawalpindi. And their three brothers, they all studied there, and later on they joined regular school in the vocational school where his father was a teacher.
Now, we know that General Munir did not pass out of Pakistan's military academy in Kakul near Abbottabad, but is from what's called the Officers Training School. Has that been a handicap? Has the fact that he didn't go to the military academy given him some sort of complex?
Not really, not a complex to him, but there is an informal caste system which seems to prevail among the Pakistan military officers. The regular recruits from the Pakistan Military Academy, Kakul, tend to look down upon the OTS scheme people because this was a scheme which was started, well, originally in 1948 up to 1960, then again revived in 1982 up to 1990 where the shortage of officers was fulfilled. But actually, the officers coming from these schools had the same sort of exposure to training and learning and on field. It is what the officer does on field which hardens him up, teaches him the right professional skills, and also earns him the reputation of whether he's an officer up to the mark. And in that, as I mentioned, because he worked on the Indian front, it was considered to be good and professionally appropriate.
Has Pakistan had army chiefs earlier who've come from the officers training school, or is General Munir the first?
No, he's not the first. Actually, Zia himself was from an OTS background, but not from the OTS stream inside Pakistan. He had done it in undivided India. But Zia's main vice chief, who functioned more or less as the army chief when Zia was president, K.M. Arif, and he had tremendous powers vis-a-vis the army professional administration. He was from the OTS scheme as well. So Asim Munir is certainly not the first.
Now, in 2019, when the Pulwama attack happened, General Munir was head of the ISI. In that capacity, how much responsibility does he bear for that attack?
Well, you see, the tap for supporting the non-state actors has never really been turned off from the ISI. It is fashionable here from analysts to say that, well, Munir was at the helm at that time. But I would like to flag the position of Munir at that time was not very comfortable because, as you know, he had taken a stand of pointing out the corruption of the Prime Minister's wife and her relatives, their connections over corruption matters with the Punjab Chief Minister Usman Bustar at that time. So at best, he had a stint of about 8 months in the ISI and was shunted out from there at the behest of the Prime Minister. So he would have been aware of the problems and schemes, operations, but he hadn't really settled into his ISI job. That's the point I would like to flag.
Is there any truth to the often repeated claim that General Munir was removed as ISI chief after 8 or 9 months because he had sought to brief Imran Khan about allegations of corruption regarding Bushra Bibi, Imran Khan's wife, and Imran Khan refused to accept and tolerate this. Is there truth to that claim?
Yes, absolutely, it's absolutely correct. Although at that moment when he was to go there, it has been admitted by a person like Faisal Wauda on the Pakistan media. Faisal Wauda speaks oftentimes on the instigation of the Pakistan army. He says that when he was planning to go and tell Imran Khan, Faisal Wauda had met him and cautioned him that, look, you shouldn't be doing this. He may take it otherwise. But Asim Munir, as know, I believe he has a sort of single-minded approach on many things. So once he makes up his mind, he said, I will go and tell him. It is up to him to react in a way which whatever he wants. And he went and did tell him. Earlier also, there were reports that during liaison visits to Iran, for instance, the official Pakistani line was not to point out certain things which were true or factual, but Asim Munir, as the media ISI, decided to admit or point out these things in the presence of Iranian officials, about which a dim view was taken by the top leadership, both political and military.
What do these qualities tell us about General Munir? Is he defiant? Is he determined to do what he wants? Or is it that he's bold and fearless and insists upon standing up against corruption, insists upon saying the right thing? Which of the two?
Well, partially both. You see, he is a single-minded sort of a personality, seized of certain personal traits and which he believes in, and he follows those things with a certain devotion, one might say. And this I think stems from his religious training, perhaps.
So let's come to 2022 when General Munir got appointed Army Chief. At the time, this appointment was controversial because he took over 2 days after his retirement, and that 2-day gap had to be bridged, and they found a way of doing so. But did that raise questions about his appointment, and did it affect his authority as Army Chief?
Certainly, in the initial period. You see, the next batch of the PM 76th course regular, 75th course regular, two of the four generals who were in line for the chief's job, they resigned in protest or compulsorily retired in protest. Azhar Abbas and Faiz Hamid, who was actually Imran Khan's blue-eyed boy, who was being pushed for the top job. Even at one stage, Bajwa was off with Imran's wishes, but it didn't happen.
Now, as Army Chief, two things stand out during the last 2 years that he's been Army Chief about General Munir. First of all, he's ensured that Imran Khan goes to jail and stays in jail. Is there a sort of personal vendetta that goes back to the time when he was ISI Chief?
It would be a personal angst, definitely. But more than that, there have been such gross irregularities in which Imran Khan was mixed up, and more evidence emerged during the court-martial of Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid that this was being done at the latter's instance to ultimately clear the ground to make Faiz Hamid the army chief. So this became an issue with assumed much larger proportion for the institution of the army as such, that if political leaders could dabble in conjunction with a serving military officer to influence, the top position or promotions, should the army tolerate this or not? And this helped Asim Munir to also bring whoever was initially at a dissenting mode among the top leadership to rally behind him against Imran Khan. So then there were cases, yes, because the judiciary was seen to be, the judiciary also was seen to be very partial to Imran Khan, was giving him soft options, deferring cases, giving him bail. So as Munir started asserting his authority, he used the political front also to try and tame the judiciary. So this was a dual phenomenon which he tried to discipline and tame Imran Khan.
But you're suggesting that not only is there a measure of personal angst in his attitude to Imran Khan, which goes back to the time when General Munir was head of ISI, but there are also good grounds which have been indicated by the court-martialing of General Fayez Hamid.
Yes, yes, exactly. And now the attempt has been to implicate Imran also and to try him in a military court. And the latest judgment of the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court after the amended 26th Amendment has given a decision in favor of allowing civilians to be tried in military courts if need be.
The second thing that stands out during the first 2 years that General Munir has served as army chief is that he spent a lot of his initial months reshuffling corps commanders and moving senior generals around. Clearly, this was an attempt to strengthen his position, to overcome the fact that he had actually technically retired before he was appointed army chief. The question is, to what extent has he succeeded in strengthening his position, and to what extent has he created fresh fissures, fresh animosities?
I think he has succeeded to a large extent. This was a problem in the initial days. Bajwa, just before retiring, promoted 12 uh, major generals to lieutenant general. He even ordered postings of some of them, including one to the key position of 10 Corps, where he posted General Nauman Zakaria, who had a very brilliant career earlier as a DGMO also. But immediately on taking over, Asim Munir brought his own trusted person as Corps Commander Rawalpindi, Shahid Imtiaz, who is also from the Officers Training School scheme, and he has remained Corps Commander there ever since, more than 2.5 years. And he posted Nauman Zakaria back into a sort of staffing position as Chief of Logistics Staff in the General Headquarters. And Zakaria had to cool his heels for over a year before he was accommodated, of course, in a good assignment as the present Corps Commander of one Corps, Mangal.
So there was a lot of moving around of corps commanders and senior generals to ensure that
he did similar things. And when the May 9 incident happened with the Corps Commander's house being invaded by irate supporters of Imran Khan, and the Corps Commander took a path of least resistance, at that time Munir was in a fix. He wanted to send another trusted officer as the new Corps Commander. Ultimately, he managed to do so by sending Sayyid Amir Raza, who is again from the OTS scheme, as the Corps Commander. And in the now latest change, he has accommodated another senior general as a new Corps Commander of Lahore, but he has brought Amir Raza in as his Chief of General Staff, which is again a key position of support for him. So, to a large extent, he has succeeded in managing his top 3-star generals.
If I've understood your answer correctly, Mr. Banerjee, in these reshuffling of corps commanders that he did and in moving generals around in staff headquarters and elsewhere, he's brought a lot of other officer training school people into central positions. He relies upon them.
Correct. That's correct.
And therefore, this means he feels comfortable with them. He trusts them.
Yes. Yes. And then, of course, there has been the position of the DGISI, which is in many ways the second most powerful position within the Pakistan Army. Initially, he gave a 1-year extension to the then serving DGISI, Lieutenant General Nadeem Anjum, who had also had reason to feel disgruntled by the pejorative names called for him by Imran Khan. So he continued with him for a year, more than his normal retirement. And then, of course, he has brought in Asim Malik, who is again a well-regarded officer who was adjutant general earlier. He was keen to go as the Corps Commander Rawalpindi because his father had served as a general in the same corps. But ultimately, he brought him in as DGISI. And currently now, Asim Malik has also been made the National Security Advisor. First time a serving Lieutenant General has occupied this post.
And with General Asim Malik as National Security Advisor as well as Director General ISI, I assume it means General Munir has a very close hold on both the ISI and on the post of NSA.
Yes, absolutely. And there is another aspect to it. Asim Malik was promoted Lieutenant General 1 year before others of his batch. So he will be completing 4 years as a Lieutenant General uh, in September. Now, Asim Malik uh, has also been given charge of NSA. So Munir need not now extend his term as a serving Lieutenant General. Come September, he would allow him to become full-time NSA, and he would say that I have another loyal person whom I can accommodate as the new DGIS. So that he is in a sense clipping Asim Malik's wings as well.
I get the feeling that General Munir is rather astute and strategic in the way he appoints people.
Yes, yes, that is true. But unfortunately, in his handling of the political situation, the impression has still persisted that he has not worked from a position of strength, or he has not been able to sufficiently erode the narrative or popularity of Imran Khan as the victimized, former prime minister.
That's the outstanding problem, that the popularity of Imran Khan, someone that General Munir has tried very hard to sideline and to send to jail, Imran's popularity not only continues and increases, but remains in a sense a credible challenge to General Munir's position, doesn't it?
That's right. And the February 24 election sort of reinforced, despite, the managing of the results ultimately, that if it had been a free and fair election, then Imran would have come with a resounding mandate.
The other thing that follows from the increased popularity of Imran Khan and the fact that General Munir has attempted to sideline him is that General Munir is not necessarily very popular with Pakistani people. Maybe the present situation has begun to alter that slightly, but until Operation Sindhur and Pakistan's response began, General Munir's popularity was not very great, and the popularity of the army wasn't very great.
Yes, exactly so. And this is partially what explains his uh, rather peculiar speech on April 16th, when somebody within the army leadership advised him to uh, throw off the sort of mantle of low profile and give the determined impression that he was talking from a position of strength. And I think I would read, his repeated messages about uh, following the uh, rule of law and hard state, and going back to the fervent call for supporting the jugular vein that Kashmir is. All this is stemmed from the compulsion to appear now fully comfortable, strong leader of the army, as has been the mantra normally reflect.
So you're saying that that speech of April the 16th, where he referred to Kashmir as Pakistan's jugular vein and promised that Pakistan will never leave its brethren in Kashmir alone, was an attempt to reposition his own standing internally in the country and to change his image.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not something that has not been said by army generals before or by politicians in Pakistan before. Whenever uh, they have to play to their domestic audience, they have made these type of statements. Also, if there has been some disturbance in Kashmir, then they have tried to capitalize on that by making this type of statement. So Munir is no exception. What his speech revealed was a rather childish type of harking back to this theory of two nation state and about, Muslims being different and having ideals and ambitions which were different from the social norms of Hindus, etc. This was rather strange in the forum that he was speaking, and from the position of an army chief uh, who was speaking in this manner. So that showed lack of strategic vision or lack of any ambition to have some sort of a constructive regional role.
Let me quote that part of the speech. He said, our religions are different, our customs are different, our traditions are different, our thoughts are different, our ambitions are different. The truth is that very, very few Pakistani Punjabis, and Punjab is the majority population of Pakistan, actually would believe that. Pakistani Punjabis before partition grew up side by side with Hindus, they grew up side by side with Sikhs. They know that these communities have the same swear words, the same food, the same way of living, the same way of making mischief. So when he tries to create a Hindu-Muslim divide, He's running against the traditions of Punjab.
In a way, yes. But you see, this is the lesson which Pakistanis have learned from very childhood, from their education curriculum, and in the army also. This has been the uh, traditional pattern of dealing with India as the enemy number one. Briefly, after the terrorism had in the federally administered tribal areas, there was a book by an American colonel, Colonel A.O. Smith, about the Quetta uh, staff college experiences, where he mentioned that senior level brigadiers and major generals had stopped regarding India as enemy number one, but were deeming the terrorist forces of the Taliban, the Tehrik-e-Taliban or the Punjab Taliban, as the enemy number one. But that seems to have receded from the calculus after the problem was temporarily sorted out by the two operations that were taken up in Rahil Sharif's and Bajwa's time. And again, India has emerged as enemy number one, which is easy to flaunt before the Pakistani public.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's at this point, Mr. Banerjee, come to General Munir's thinking, his character, and his ideology. In other words, let's talk about him not as chief, but as an individual, as a human being. He's a Hafiz, as you pointed out earlier, which means he knows the Quran by heart. As a result, sometimes in India, he's referred to as a jihadi general. Is that a fair comment?
I would stop short at this stage of referring to him as a jihadi general. He is a staunch Islamic conservative person, uh, right of center, and in a very straight-jacket way, who has learned his Islamic teaching that Islam has always been used as a crutch by the army to justify so many things. And Asim is just holding on to the same crutch. And this also emerges from one of the postings that he did right after he became the army chief. He brought in uh, the present DG ISPR, Ahmad Sharif Chaudhry, as his DG ISPR in the rank of Major General. Now, Ahmad Sharif Chaudhry is from the electromechanical engineers. Nothing to do with, administration in the army. Also, he is the son of Sultan Bashiruddin Mahmud, who was a Pakistani nuclear scientist who made solid contributions to the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. After his retirement, he started an organization called Umma Tamire Now, social welfare organization, and the delegation went to meet Osama bin Laden in 2000, early 2000. They came back, and this raised the hackles of the CIA and George Tenet, and they wanted to interrogate him as to what happened in his meetings with Osama bin Laden. The Pakistani state did not let the CIA intervene and question him. He was sent off on a mission to uh, Myanmar. After his retirement, Sultan Mahmud wrote a very peculiar book about, death and life after death, etc., which became, a talking point. So he is a little bit of a oddball, and his son has now been made not only a major general in charge of DGISPR, but a lieutenant general. Again, very unusual for an EME guy in Pakistan Army to achieve the rank of lieutenant general. So he is liked by Asim Munir. Similarly, the DG military intelligence whom he has brought in is from a family which is very conservative. The only bearded senior officer, long bearded senior officer in the Pakistan hierarchy today is the DG-MI, Wajid Zia, Major General Wajid Zia. He comes from a family of army officers.
So
So
just
these type of traits are there, but I would still refrain from calling him a fundamentalist or a jihadi because I have not seen any such rantings by him in public domain. He has talked about Islam. He can quote things about honesty and uh, responding to things in a moral way by quoting from Quran, but he has not talked about jihad.
So I take your point. He's not jihadi. That's an incorrect definition, but he's conservative. And the other thing that you've identified is that just as he's been strategically appointing fellow officers with the OTS background to strategic positions and corps commander positions, similarly, he's been appointing conservatives who he feels comfortable with to strategic positions, including General Chaudhry at ISPR. Again, this is the second strand of people he's promoted, conservatives who he feels comfortable with.
Yes,
Now,
that's correct.
it's said that in some ways, General Munir has modeled himself on General Zia ul Haq, who believed that the army is not just the guardian of Pakistan's borders, but also the guardian of what General Zia called Pakistan's ideological frontier. Is that how General Munir sees himself, as someone who's following in the footsteps of General Zia?
No, again, I would say that the style of Zia and style of Munir are completely different. Zia would be very outgoing and meet even with his most hostile critics in a very friendly way. Only his eyes would betray the hostility. I have myself seen at close quarters when I was in Islamabad. So Zia was an outgoing person, very sweet on the face of it to talk to. But Munir is a very withdrawn, retired type of person. He has not had any political, or not encouraged any contacts with politicians of the day or with, the social elite. He stays in a very secluded, professionally correct army way. So he has not made any observations about the matters relating to Jinnah or, uh, the treatment of minorities. He has not done any such thing. So I wouldn't think that he's modeled himself on Sia. No.
The important point you're making is that he doesn't fraternize with politicians. He leads a reserved, secluded life. He sticks within army circles. He doesn't socialize.
That's right. As far as I know.
Now, something called the Munir Doctrine has been identified. And recently, writing an article in the Times of India, Ajay Bisaria, India's last High Commissioner in Pakistan, said the following about the Munir Doctrine. He wrote, "The Munir Doctrine is a dead end. It substitutes belligerence for strategic thinking. It indulges the military's worst instincts. It recycles myths of victimhood, territorial irredentism, and religious nationalism. It emphasizes Pakistan's identity as a wronged other of India, destined to fight the larger state." To what extent would you, someone who knows and understands General Munir exceptionally well, agree with this description of the Munir Doctrine?
Well, Ambassador Bisaria has done a really excellent job in sort of uh, adding flesh to whatever he said that day, but I wouldn't go that far. As I said, it was a rather simplistic harking back to an old position which most army officers, as young officers, are educated or imparted deliberately to, treat India as the enemy number one, and then progress from there into professional uh, excellence learning on the job. But yes, many of the things that Ambassador Bisaria says would probably be deemed correct if it is being discussed in a sort of scholastic manner as to what is. I don't think Munir himself uh, knows that this is his job.
Tell me, and let me ask you this specifically, what is General Munir's attitude to India?
Attitude is definitely a hostile and hardline. Uh, but that is normal. I mean, that is normal for a senior general to have. I mean, Bajwa was perhaps an exception in this regard, in the sense that he initiated some thinking about the importance of having a regional dialogue plus, defreezing the hostility so that economically Pakistan could benefit. Munir has had traversed a different path for. He also wants Pakistan to improve its economic position. He set up this special investment facilitation council under direct supervision of serving army officers, and he tried to curb profligacy of political leadership in various economic programs. Of course, this has only had limited marginal impact. There has been no new investment attracted so far, but at least he has shown concern to improve the economic position of Pakistan. And even in the speech on April 16th, he talked about the despair of Pakistani youth and the brain drain. He said that, well, if you all are going outside, I wouldn't treat this as brain drain, but I would treat it as a brain gain. So he is trying to show to Pakistan that there is need to be more optimistic about their own nation.
I want to focus a little bit about his attitude to India. We've drifted into talking about General Munir and the handling of the economy.
Sorry.
Let me, therefore, before I come back to India, ask you one more question about General Munir and the economy. As you pointed out, he has in recent months, maybe it's a year, acquired a critical role in running Pakistan's economy. It's a critical role in terms of seeking international investment for the economy, and the economy is crying out for investment. Also, in the last 6-7 months, he's got a 2-year extension. He now will be retiring not in November 2025, but November 2027. When you put together his success in strengthening his position as army chief by appointing people either from the OTS or conservative backgrounds to strategic positions where he's comfortable with them, and when you put that together with his economic role, and when you put it together with the fact that he has an extension up to 2027, does he emerge as one of the most powerful army chiefs that Pakistan has had in recent times?
Again, I would caution accepting such a position. He is the army chief. Every army chief in Pakistan is powerful. But there have been more powerful army chiefs than Munir, who have evolved naturally or stepped into these positions naturally. So I wouldn't read too much on his being becoming very powerful because of these reasons. If there is an army debacle, for instance, professionally at the hands of India, then he would immediately suffer from his position, and there would be again dissent rising from within, and ambitions also rising from within. No other senior general would like an army chief to remain at the helm for so long. But there is a tradition in Pakistan of caution. There no coup from within or from below has against the army chief has succeeded in its history. So senior ambitious generals also remain very cautious
Let's
of
go
supporting the chief.
back to his attitude to India. You described him as definitely hostile and hardline. What do you think lies behind his sanctioning the Pahalgam terror attack? He did so at a time when Pakistan has major serious economic problems. It has deep internal political divisions. It has a very weak civilian government. It has internal terror threats that seem to be escalating. And it has a very fragile, poor relationship with Afghanistan. Far from Afghanistan providing deep security, Afghanistan has become a threat to Pakistan. Why then, at this point of time, would he have sanctioned Pahalgam?
Well, you see, if you want to examine the word sanction, uh, you see, he has been under siege because of the deteriorating terrorism situation on the Western Front, both in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in Balochistan. The Jafar Express train hijacking uh, in on the 11th of March was really a very serious incident, and it indicated the effectiveness of the Baloch Liberation Army to the extent to which they have been able to act throughout the province, also attacking Chinese nationals working on the CPEC programs. And China has put Pakistani security authorities under considerable pressure for the increase in this type of incidents. So Asim Munir has been under some sort of a siege. And regarding sanctioning, you see, the tap has, as I said, never been turned off. So it is the ISI. I have said elsewhere that the ISI senior officers within the ISI, they handle the non-state actors. And some of these non-state actors are highly trained, very well equipped. They have been given a certain autonomy to act once they are able to infiltrate and seek sanctuary in the hills and forests of the terrain that is there in our part of Kashmir. And so they are able to operate, or they have to prove their effectiveness from time to time from the signals that emanate from sometimes public postures. So when he spoke on the 16th of April in this manner, we should immediately have uh, made a connection that, you see, Pakistan is looking for a reprisal to the Balochistan incident where Ahmad Sharif Chaudhry openly accused India of being the main plotter. So we should have anticipated that they would rev up, the support or create some new major incident attacking a soft target inside our part of Kashmir.
Now, today, as you know, is the fourth day of military clashes between India and Pakistan. And clearly, there is escalation happening, possibly you could argue, on both sides. Given General Munir's character and background, but also given the fact that he can't afford to fail when he takes on India, he needs to succeed, otherwise, his own position as army chief would be in danger. How far do you think he's prepared to go?
This is a very difficult question to answer. On the escalation ladder, uh, things can go out of hand, and that is the danger which our planners or decision makers have to carefully assess. To what extent the nuclear threshold bluff of the Pakistanis can be called. It has become again fashionable here to talk about the Indian military's superiority in terms of technological acquisitions and strength, numerical capabilities, all taken together, of being far superior than the Pakistan army in terms of professional competence. So uh, I have certain reservations about accepting this concept unreservedly. So it is a very matter of serious concern
So, if I
that
understand you correctly, you're saying that General Munir will be determined to fight on because he cannot afford to emerge looking weak and looking as if he's lost.
that's right. There has to be some sort of an honorable sort of a stalemate. This has been commented upon even by other impartial and well regarded observers like Hussein Haqqani in USA, who has said that, you see, both parties should feel that, and for their signaling to their own domestic audience that they have done enough to have emerged honorably from this situation.
So, he will
So
fight
only
on.
in a that reminds me of the phrase with which Christine Fair describes the Pakistan army, fighting to the end. So, and she of course now says that they are an insurgent army, but they are a professional army also.
So, you're saying that he will fight on till there is an honorable stalemate.
Yes.
Do you think he would hesitate to press the nuclear button if Pakistan felt that it was losing badly and its four triggers were affected?
Well, about the nuclear button, you see, again, it will be a collegiate or consensual decision, despite whatever proclivities Asim Munir may personally have, and these thresholds have been very clearly spelled out by the Pakistani establishment, military establishment, repeatedly. The Khalid Kidwai statement about red lines at international fora talk about conditions under which the nuclear button could be uh, resorted to. And he spells out an economic blockade of Karachi. He spells out large-scale military intrusion by land forces of Pakistan, of India into Pakistan or into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and one or two other related conditions, four or five. So he says if that happens, then we will be forced. Of course, they also talk about tactical nuclear weapons, which have limited impact, and but they have not ever agreed to no first use. So it is a thing we must keep at the back of our minds when we plan any action, and it's not going to be easy calling the nuclear bluff and do actions just below the nuclear threshold, which will annihilate conventional parity or near parity that Pakistan enjoys. conflicts.
Let me put it like this. Other than a situation where India invades Pakistan and acquires control over considerable parts of Pakistani territory, the second red line, other than this first one, that would worry General Munir is an economic black blockade of Pakistan that destroys Pakistan's economic prospects. You mentioned the possibility of blockading Karachi airport, but the other possibility is a denial of water. The Indus Waters Treaty, and India has already, in the shape and form of Mr. C.R. Patil, the water minister, promised that not a single drop of Indus water will be allowed to go to Pakistan. If that were to anywhere near happen, actually it's impossible, it can't happen, but if it were to anywhere near happen, that would be deemed to be an economic blockade because the Indus waters are 80% of Pakistan's agriculture and between 20 and 25% altogether, including electricity generation of its GDP. Would that, if it were to look like a likelihood, push General Munir to the nuclear option?
Again, you see, it's a signal from India, and it's a very important signal, and this could really hurt Pakistan. But it will have this impact over a time frame. It won't happen immediately, but it will happen over 3, 4, 6 months at least. And then if it does, then of course it is going to hurt Pakistan very badly. So at that time, how they react or what sort of leverage this temporary keeping in abeyance gives us in terms of policy making is something that will evolve, and it's difficult to forecast or predict.
Can I interrupt and ask you a very different question?
Yes.
Has he got the mental makeup? Has he got the guts? Has he got the strength to push the button? I'm not talking about strategy. I'm not talking about options. I'm talking about him. Is he the sort of man who could push the button? In other words, is he a Truman? Is he capable of being a Pakistani Truman?
I would say no. But again, it's an informed guess. So, I hope it's correct.
Finally, my last question. One of the problems General Munir faced up till April when he made that speech was that his personal popularity and standing and the popularity and standing of the Pakistan Army both had been adversely affected. The Army's attitude and relationship with Imran Khan, as well as the Army's visible support for an unpopular, if not unelected government, had badly affected the Army's standing in the country. Now, after the Operation Sindoor and after what's happened in the last 4 days, has there been a surge of support in Pakistan for the Army and in particular for the Army chief?
Well, surge for the Army as the Army's position definitely will improve. And also, as the chief of the Army, Munir's position would also improve from what it was, say, 1 month back. But this is something we will have to see over time. And whether Imran's attitude changes as a result is also something we will have to watch closely. I would think it would happen as a Munir's position, definitely.
Mr. Banerji, thank you very much for the time you've given me. And in particular, thank you very much for enlightening us both about the career of General Munir and the way he has strategically played his hand as Army Chief, but also about his character, personality, and his thinking, and in that context, about his attitude to India. I'll note for the audience that you said he is definitely hostile and hardline towards India. With specific regard to the present problem, you said he'll fight on till there is an honourable stalemate. But when I asked you whether he's the sort of man who could be a Pakistani Harry Truman, and does he have the personality that would allow him to push the nuclear button if it was required, you answered you didn't think so. Your answer was no. I thank you for this understanding. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.